Hi everyone, my name is Anangsha Alammyan and welcome to my channel where we talk about books, productivity and writing. On today's chat, I have with me a very special guest and you are going to love this one because it's all about writing, editing and publishing a book. If you are on Medium, you must have heard of Jordan Gross. He is not only the editor of Mind Cafe, but has over 10,000 followers, is a multiple times top writer, and is this insanely talented storyteller. And he has created his unique blend of storytelling with self help advice, and his stories are so good. I am a huge fan. But did you know that apart from his writing on Medium and his editing for Mind Cafe, Jordan is also the self published author of two books? And his third book, What Happens in Tomorrow World, is coming out in March 2021. Jordan actually reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to read an advance copy of his book. And I loved it so much that I decided that I have to reach out to him and have to have a discussion with him regarding books because not only is he a great storyteller, but he's also a fantastic writer, and his book held my attention through till the end. I started reading it on a morning on one lazy Sunday, and I couldn't stop until almost 50% of the book was done. And within the next 24 hours, I had completed the entire book. Yeah, it's that interesting. So today we are going to have a discussion with Jordan regarding the writing process, what it takes into making a book, how to go about editing, and how to go about pitching a publisher, and Jordan's story of how he got a traditional publishing deal for his book. If you are someone who has plans to publish your first book soon, or if you are an author and your book is already out in the world but you haven't made many sales, I would recommend you to stick through this interview because Jordan gave some amazing tips on how to go about marketing your book. In fact, he mentioned an approach called the staggered marketing approach, which is so inspiring and it sounds so effective that I am going to apply them to my books. So, yeah, without further ado, let's welcome Jordan Cross to this interview. Hey, Jordan, thank you so much for being here.
Hey Anna, thank you so much for having me. I always love talking to you. You know that.
Likewise. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your book for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my platform is all about personal development through creative storytelling. And just to rewind a little bit, I don't want to give you like my 10-minute, I could talk about my story all day. But I came into the personal development space sort of for my own accord, sort of to help other people. But I was transitioning from a corporate position and I got into personal development. I self published my first book in January of 2018. And after that, I just tried to figure out what can I do in this world. I started writing more, I started speaking more, I did podcasts, I did coaching. And the more I consumed in the personal development space, the more I realized everything was essentially the same. All the advice was very similar, just maybe packaged in a little bit of a different way, a different research study or a different experiment or a different psychological principle, but all kind of commonsensical approaches to how we can live better lives. And I've always learned best through storytelling. Like when I was younger, my dad is this major storyteller. And instead of, if he wanted me to leave a play date or something, he didn't just say, hey, we have to go. He would tell me a story about how responsible young boys who are going to do well on their tests and win their soccer games leave play dates on time. And that made me leave as opposed to just saying, hey, we have to go. So I've always had this inkling for stories. And I decided that when I was reading personal development, I consumed the material in the best way when there were these beautiful, often fictional stories being told. So I gravitate toward books like The Alchemist, The Go-Giver, The Energy Bus, anything by Mitch Albom, books that have an inspirational vibe to them, but aren't necessarily just in your face prescriptive advice. And I'm somebody who, when I enjoy consuming something, I want to create it myself. So that's what I started doing. And I built this platform and this brand around personal development through creativity. I want to bring more fun to personal development, more lightheartedness. It's a very stressful often intense process to get introspective and work on yourself. And I want to bring it some lightness, some comedic value, some real fluidity in a storytelling way to what I do. So I've done two books in this world now. My last one was called The Journey to Cloud Nine. That came out right before the pandemic hit. But now I am coming out with a new book, March 30th, 2021, called What Happens in Tomorrow World. And it's a modern day fable about navigating uncertainty. And we can talk more about it, but essentially it's a story based on my grandparents, and it includes fun toy prizes and badass girls and people who are navigating uncertainty in their own lives.
That's also amazing. And the way you put it, self-help through storytelling, I think that works so well because whenever I read your Medium articles, it's like once you start, you can't take your eyes off because the flow is so amazing. And
That
it's really
that
good.
makes
Yeah.
that makes me so happy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a big goal for me too. It's like when I never really liked reading. But I realized that I actually do like reading if it's something that I can't put down. And something that I can't put down are these stories that flow, and they have characters that I can relate to, and they have all the feels where I laugh and I cry and I smile and I think and I get confused and then I realize things and I learn and I grow. So that's what I wanted to make for other people. So it's these like quick reads, right? I've been told a lot that somebody can finish my book and my books or my stories like very breezily in an hour and 30 minutes. They just read it at the beach or on an airplane because it's just an easy read. It's like a feel good read. And that's all I want to do for people. I want to make them feel good, and that's important.
Actually, I'm very happy to talk about your book with you because I read the book. You gave me a copy. I'm very happy to receive a copy. And
Yeah, I'm so grateful you did.
in the one morning, I just started reading it. I thought I would read for 10 minutes, but I ended up reading half the book in one go because I couldn't stop. I think I told you about this because it was
Uh-huh.
that interesting, and you have done a great job. So
You. Yeah, and I was so grateful that you would be one of my early readers. I really value your opinion and your perspective, and you always tell great stories as well. So I thought you'd be a great person to read it.
happy to hear that. So, can you tell us like how you got the idea behind this book and what was your motivation behind writing about a fictional place called Tomorrow World?
Yeah. So the motivation behind this book actually came a little bit out of necessity. It was my first 4 days in quarantine in New York City. I was by myself. I live with three roommates, but they all went home to their parents and their families. And I waited a couple of extra weeks because my mom is in the high risk category. So I didn't want to go home without having really quarantined. And like I said, I had a book out only a month or 3 weeks earlier that I was trying to promote, but I just started to feel really badly about self-promoting while everything was going on in the world. So I just stopped completely and I asked myself, what can I do for other people that would be helpful right now? And I think we know that one of the most common words of 2020 was uncertainty. And I wanted to figure out a way to help people with the uncertainty going on in the world. So I just thought, and I got phone calls from both of my grandmas, and they were both telling me how, they were so uncertain as to what was going on in the world. And one Grandma Harriet, was kind of like, but I think we'll all get through it. I think we can just get through this and everything will be okay. And then my other Grandma Ellie, she's a little bit more down on things, and she's saying the world's going to end, and I don't know what's going to happen, and everybody's screwed, and all bad pessimistic things. So I'm thinking about these two very separate approaches to uncertainty, and I also start thinking of my grandpas who unfortunately passed away, but they were very different people as well, and I kind of imagined what they would be saying right now. How would they be reacting to the uncertainty going on in the world? And then I had these four character types, different responses to uncertainty, none necessarily right, none necessarily too wrong, but just four different types. So that's when my brain started going. And I use this fun word and process called imagitivitation, which is a combination of imagination, interpretation, creativity, and implementation to build a story. And that's what I did. And quite honestly, I can never answer the question of like how I created it. It just was, my mind is weird, and thoughts just started racing, and I thought of movies that I'd seen and other books that I'd read and shows that I was watching, and I put together this story of what happens in Tomorrow World, which Tomorrow World is an arcade, and inside the arcade there are these 4 talking prizes in a big giant crane game. And these prizes are my 4 grandparents. They're called Opti, Pessy, Sage, and Chill, which is optimistic, pessimistic, sage like wisdom, and then chill, sort of indifferent. And those are the 4 typical responses based on my grandparents and some research I did online about how we all respond to uncertainty. So I created the story from there. And I thought these characters are uncertain as to whether or not they're going to get scooped up by the crane and go into the real world, just like we are. What's the real world going to look like? How can we respond to uncertainty? What's going to be beneficial? What's going to be detrimental? So that's what I did. And crazy enough, I wrote the story in my first 4 days of quarantine, and that was that.
It just took you 4 days to finish the story?
It did, yeah.
Oh,
It only took
wow.
me
It's
4
amazing
days.
for it to take longer than that because it's so good, right?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, you saw the all new and improved version after professional editing and whatnot. But the first draft was only 4 days. And by the way, it was only 15,000 words. So I like shorter books. I like little reads and books that I can get through in one sitting. It'll probably only be like 100 to 120 pages at the end of the day. But yeah, I sat down in the morning and I wrote for a couple hours. Then the next day I sat and I wrote for a couple more hours. And then the next day I sat and I wrote for a couple more hours. And the last day I mainly just, cleaned it up. And then I actually published it as a blog post, a Medium article.
Oh,
And
one post or a collection, like series of posts?
one post, yeah. So just like a 35-minute read, I think it was, or maybe no, 40. It was a 46-minute read, the first draft, and then what happened was I reached out to a couple of my favorite personal development through creative storytelling authors. I reached out to Robin Sharma, who wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, 5 a.m. Club, one of my absolute favorites, and one of his assistants got back to me and said, this is a great concept, but we're very busy. We have our own things going on. So I was basically asking for an endorsement or a promotion of some sort. And I said, okay, that's cool. And then I reached out to John Gordon, who wrote The Energy Bus, The Garden, a lot of other bestsellers in this parable, fables, allegory space. And he didn't answer for like a day or two. And in the meantime, I reached out to Ken Blanchard, who wrote Who Moved My Cheese and The 1 Minute Manager, which are also these great parables. I didn't get a response from him. And then I reached out to John David Mann, who's the co-author of the Go Giver series, which again is all about storytelling, fictional storytelling, to reveal about how giving is one of the best concepts we can have in the world. And he's a friend of mine, a mentor, so to speak, and he said that he just had his own stuff he was working on as well, and he would be happy to support later on, but in the moment he was just too busy. Then I heard back from John Gordon, and John Gordon is this awesome guy who I really have only connected with a few times. We chatted on the phone once and then just email exchanged a couple of times. And he also said he was too busy to do anything himself, but he connected me on an email chain to his former publisher from Wiley Publishing. And a guy named Matt Holt responded to the email and said he was excited to chat. And John said, look, no promises, Jordan, but this is a cool concept. And Matt has his own imprint at a new publishing house, Ben Bella Books, Matt Holt Books imprint, and he might be interested in something like this. So I was so pumped to talk to Matt, and we got on the phone, hit it off, talked for like an hour. And the next thing I knew, I had my first real traditional publishing deal. So that's how everything came to be. It was just right place, right time, reaching out to the right people, and honestly having no real expectations with it. Like, it was up as a blog post. I didn't want it to be a traditionally published book. Um, but that's just the way things worked out. So I had to take it down as a blog post, and then obviously in the months since, reworked it, had editors, had readers help with the concept, and it's been like 9 months since I wrote the first draft.
Such a cool story, like most people would be so embarrassed or maybe hesitant to reach out to these big names, but you just send them emails and you actually got response and you got a traditional publishing deal, which is so awesome. So
Yeah, it really comes from my mom's advice. My mom always says to me, "What's the worst thing that can happen?" They just say no. And I changed that up a little bit, because I think if you send an outreach message and you're rude, and then the worst thing that can happen is they say no, but also they say like you're not a good person, or they tell other people that they shouldn't answer your messages. So I say, what's the worst that can happen if you present yourself in the best way? Then they just say no, which is that happened from 3 out of the 4 people, but one person didn't say no, right? And that's all you need.
I think it's a very cool advice for, people who are trying to publish books, that don't hesitate. Just reach out. You never know what opportunities might open up for you just because of
Right.
this.
Right.
So, yeah, you said that the editing process took 9 months. So, can you tell us a little bit more about it? Like, how was the first draft and how is it different from what the book is now? And what were the
Yeah.
phases? Did you hate your work when you look back at it again?
So the editing process, it hasn't been the full 9 months. The timing right now has been mainly due to two things. One is like the whole production process. So cover design, interior design, front flap, back flap, spine, font, all descriptions, back cover copy, author profile, all that stuff. So that's what's taken up the bulk of it. In addition, foot traffic in bookstores is basically non-existent right now. So the publishing house wanted to put off the launch for as long as possible because of COVID. So that's the main reason. So editing itself, actually, my editor reached out to me in June and tore through the manuscript, the first draft, and asked me if I could have the edits back to him by the beginning of July. And I just, when I have a task, I just get really into it. So I think I had the edits for revisions for him within a week. And our editing process was really expedited because I didn't have that much else going on. We were in quarantine, so I was just working on this and a couple other articles and editing. So I just went back into it, and I did the second round and then the third round and then some minor stuff in the fourth round. And then we're ready to send it to the copy editor in August, I think. And then by the end of August, everything was pretty much set. So it's not that different from the first draft. The language is way cleaner. It's a lot more succinct. And some of the characters have changed a little bit, but the overall essence of the story is still there, which is what matters most to me. My editor actually told me I was probably the easiest person he's ever worked with, because I wasn't so attached to my pre-existing manuscript and draft, which to me, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because what matters to me most is the idea, the imagination, the creativity, the storytelling that I put onto the paper. I'm not the expert when it comes to grammar and syntax and everything like that. So sure, if an expert tells me, hey, you need to fix this paragraph, then I'm going to go and do it. I'm not going to be combative and say, no, I know better than you do. So that was really helpful for the editing team, was that I was just very receptive to that feedback and wanted to make it best according to what they thought, because they've done this hundreds of times, whereas this is my first time.
I think that's like so cool that it happened this way for you, because many people who have editors, they say that the editor completely massacred their book and it
Mhm.
changed completely. I think
Mhm.
what you said that about not being attached, that's a major thing that worked in your favor. And
Yeah.
that maybe that's why the editor did said that you were one of the best people to work with, best writers to work with, right?
Yeah. I just think it's it's because there's some things that I am attached to. Like if the story would have changed completely, or if he would have said this can't be a parable, it has to be nonfiction, then I would have said that's not me. That's not according to my brand. But because of the nature of the changes, I was very happy to just go with the flow, be easygoing, and just listen and make the fixes.
Right. He didn't change the whole idea, just a little bit, bits and pieces. That's awesome. So did you
Mhm.
have beta readers during the process apart from
You.
the me?
You were one of my readers, and I'm so grateful for that. And then I actually remember reading the first draft out loud for an hour over a FaceTime call to my mom, dad, and brother. So that was really nice. And I think my dad and brother maybe fell asleep in the middle of it, but my mom listened to the whole thing, and she really enjoyed it. And then I sent it to my grandma. I sent everything to my grandma Harriet, because she knows how to use the phone and the iPad and the computer. My grandma Ellie does not, so she waits for the print stuff to come out. I sent it to her, and then I sent it to a couple other beta readers, um, mostly for the purpose of ideas. Who's the target audience going to be? What would the best way to promote this be? Who should I reach out to? Should I put this in schools? Should I put it in businesses? Should I put it in what type of industries, startups or nonprofits, right? So I was just trying to get marketing ideas, because that's honestly the hard part of coming out with a book, is how do you spread the word, right? It's crazy and sad, but the easy part is writing it and putting the content out there. The hard part is actually getting it to spread around the world, hopefully.
Yeah, it's like writing is probably only 10% of the process. The rest is just talking about it, marketing,
Uh,
asking
yep.
people to buy the book. I think as a
hmm
writer, that's something you have to constantly do, no matter how many months have passed since your book came
Yeah,
out.
that's right. And just like you, I'm sure like the big goal for me is like how to carefully and delicately self promote. So I've been trying to come up with so many ideas as to how I can just share free content but still ask people to buy the book at the end of the day, because I do want people to buy the book. But creating like groups and free resources, and I have a free animated trailer for the book. Just it's been fun, like having ideas and creating unique ways to be myself in the marketing process, like not being too salesy or driving buy the book down people's throats.
Yeah,
I like that free, like giving people things that I enjoy as well.
that trailer is really fun to watch. I had a good time. I'm going to leave a link in the description so everyone else can check it out
Yeah,
because
that would be great.
yeah, it gives off a very happy vibe, and it's also like a preface or a trailer for the book, which works really well.
hmm hmm
Yeah. I was about to ask you about the publishing process, how you got a publisher, but you've already answered that for us. So like you said before, that your first two books were self-published. This is your first traditional publishing deal. So what do
hmm
you think is the difference between self and traditional publishing, and what are the pros and cons of both? How was the experience for you?
Yeah, so I can talk about this all day for a long time, because my first book was self-published. My second book was the boutique publishing model, which essentially the difference is I paid them up front, and then they took care of all of the back end processes. They did the editing, the cover design, the formatting, and all that good stuff. A lot of some of the marketing as well. And then finally, this last one is traditional. So I've
When
done
did
the
your first
three.
book come out?
What?
When did your first book come out?
My first book came out January 2018. My
Okay,
second book was February 2020, and then my third book will be March 2021.
okay, please
Um,
continue.
yeah, so the different processes have different pros and cons, like you said. For self-publishing, I would say the main pro was you're on your own timeline and you get out what you put into the process. So that was nice about self-publishing. You also own the rights to the book and you get all the royalties aside from what Amazon takes. Boutique publishing was really nice because I didn't have to worry so much about things that I don't particularly enjoy, which is like the
Cover
back end side
design.
of things,
Yeah.
putting it up on Amazon, tech stuff. That's not my favorite activities. So they took care of all that stuff that I didn't like. And again, it was still what I put into it was what I was going to get out of it. So that was helpful too. I owned all the rights and royalties. With the traditional publishing model, obviously I haven't come out with the book yet, but what I've loved so far is how involved they are. It feels like a team process, right? Because at the end of the day, it's only going to be a successful project for them if they sell a lot of books, because that's how they're making money off of it. They've already given me more than enough money in my eyes to write a book. You know, it's been my dream was to get paid to write a book. So I've accomplished my goal. And now I just feel like we're this team who's trying to help, like I'm trying to help them now in a way. So that's what I've liked about this so far. It feels like this team camaraderie, unified approach to selling a book and a brand. And then I guess the downsides are, even though I got in advance, they own the rights to the book and they get the majority of the royalties, which makes sense. That's how the traditional world goes. And also it's on their timeline. So maybe, you know, I could have been pressed for deadlines or they could have been holding off on the book like they did. So I don't get to just say, I'm ready to put it out into the world. Here we go. No, it's totally based on them. So yeah, I could talk about these three different approaches all day. And actually for self-publishing, based off of my experiences, I actually help people now with their self-publishing process just because of what I went through and what I would have liked to see during the process versus what I actually experienced. And that's a really fun way that I just help other aspiring authors come out with their books, because coming out with a book is like the best experience you can ever have. It's so cool.
Do you still have that? Like, do you still offer that service of helping people out?
Mm-hmm.
Do
Yep.
you have a website?
Yeah. So it's on my website, just under Connect. I don't like,
I'm going to share
I
it
don't,
with us.
yeah, it's on the Connect page and I've got a small PowerPoint that I send to people who are interested. I don't advertise it too much because that's not my core focus or business or brand, but it is important to me. I do talk to people all the time about coming out with books. And when I can be helpful, I help mostly with mindset around coming out with a book, because I am going into I'm, I guess more formally, I'm going into the therapy world. I start school in a little bit. So I help with mindset and I come from a life coaching and startup coaching background. And then I also help with marketing and social outreach for launch purposes and then beyond that. So I do like an 8 to 12 weeks with people and it's really fun. I try to bring, just like everything I'm doing, a little bit of more fun to the process.
A lot of people actually come to me asking how to self-publish their books, but I think
Oh,
it's such a long process. So next time someone asks me, I'm going to direct them to you.
okay, yeah, I'm more than happy to help. It's so much fun and it's so rewarding when people come out with that book and they're like, no matter what happens, you know, I'm checking this off my list. You know, I'm however old and I have a book out in the world and it's gonna last forever.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that's one of the best perks of having a book. It's going to be
Yeah.
there forever.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you told you just now we're talking about marketing. So can you tell us
Mhm.
some marketing tricks that you learned from your own experience? What works, what doesn't?
Yeah. So the big one I want to talk about is I think that when people come out with a book, the most overlooked part of the process, the most overlooked benefit of a book is its endurance, the longevity of a book to continue to get sales month after month, year after year. So with the first book, I was so invested in the launch, having a launch team on day 1 to day 5, getting that bestseller banner and having all these sales and telling everybody in my network about this book. And that was what was most important to me. I wanted this short-term instant gratification of the second it came out, I wanted all these copies to be sold so I can, be really highly ranked on the bestsellers list. And that's what I focused on. I think a lot of people focus so heavily on that first day and that first week of launching a product even. And it is very, very important. But what I did is I kind of forgot about all the weeks following that. And sure, I wrote and I podcasted, and I did some other, I spoke about the book whenever I could, but I didn't tap into my own network anymore because I had exhausted it in that first week. So what I learned for the second book, and that I'm going to be doing for the third book, which was working so well until the pandemic hit, was a staggered launch approach. So basically with the regular launch approach, say you have 100 people in your network and you tell all 100 people on day one to buy your book and comment and leave reviews and post about it on social media. That's what everybody's doing, is they're telling all their people in one foul swoop to just talk about this book. But the staggered launch, what I had for The Journey to Cloud 9, my second book, was I had 25 people for something like 20 weeks after the book was released. So week one, I had 25 people who bought the book and posted about it on social media and reviewed it. But then week two, I had 25 more people who did the same thing. Week three, I had 25 more people who did the same thing. And I got up to about week 6 when I stopped. But it was this steady influx of sales, reviews, and posts, as opposed to all of those being gone within the first 1 week of the book being out there. So I kind of set it up so that the book had more longevity and more endurance to it, as opposed to just this one initial hype up of, I have a book, please buy it now. I think it's cool if a book could be more long lasting.
Yeah, I think that's very, very valuable advice because most writers don't think about the long-term aspect. They
Mhm.
are so focused on getting sales in the first week. But
Yeah.
yeah, so my question is, how did you get 25 people to post about the book on social media? Like most
Yeah.
people, they would refuse, right? So how did you get them to do it?
Yeah. So I am very active on LinkedIn, Medium, in Slack channels. I'm very one-on-one. I like to have phone calls, like just like with you. I like seeing people's faces. I like helping people without any expectation of anything in return. Although sometimes, I'll ask for things in return, like a book promotion or something like that, being on the launch team. So I tapped into my entire network of people, my elementary school friends, to my middle school friends, to my high school friends, to my soccer team, to my volunteer experiences, to my college friends, to my master's program, to my new writer friends, to influencers, and I put 527 names into an Excel sheet. And every day I reached out to, I think, like 50 of them. I did it 10 days in a row ish. And I reached out to 50 people one-on-one. And because I think one-on-one communication is the most valuable for getting somebody to do what you desire of them. It enhances the accountability and it makes it more personable. And I just said, I have this book coming out, and I was very clear and transparent. I said, I was wondering if you'd be willing to be on part of the launch team. And I scheduled everybody out. So I said, you will be part of launch team week 6. And in week 6, I'm going to ask you on Monday to purchase the book, on Tuesday to read a little bit, on Wednesday to leave a review on Amazon, on Thursday to share on social media if you could, and then on Friday to tell 3 people in person or over the phone about this book that you're reading. And that was it. And some people didn't respond, or some people just said yes and then didn't do the activities. But, if I got even 1 out of 25, that was better than nothing. So it goes back to this having no fear of if you present yourself in the best way possible, in an authentic way, and also believing that you're actually helping people with your book, then the worst thing that can happen is that they say no. So that's the same message in my outreach strategy is I'm very uncomfortable with self-promotion, but I just I just I do it. I just try it. And I have gotten to a point where I've done it so much that I'm okay if people don't want to be a part of it.
That is such great advice. I hope everyone was taking notes how to build a staggered approach to promote your book because that's really valuable, Jordan. So,
Yeah,
okay.
it's different too. Everything I try to do is different than other people, and the majority are doing that first week launch. But now you can have a sizable first week launch. You could do, if you have 200 people in your network, do 100 people in that first week, and then 10 for all the weeks following,
Yeah,
right? So
that's
you can
right.
structure it in a great way based on what you want to achieve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you said that you wrote the book during a pandemic when you were alone and you edited it over a long time. So, how did that experience, the whole writing, editing, and the whole experience, pre-publishing, how did that change you as a person?
That's a really good question. I like to think that I'm always changing a little bit, but not too much overall. I think that the main thing, which I mentioned already, is this unified approach to helping others. I have been on my own for the last 3 years since I self-published my first book. Everything I've done has been basically my thoughts, my ideas, what I wanted to do, consulting with a few people, but nothing too severe. With this process, it's really nice to see that you can be a team and try to make money and create a business out of it while doing good for other people. So that's what I've learned. I've kind of come to terms with the fact that I love helping people, but I can also monetize that as well.
That's a really great insight. I would have never thought about it that way.
Hmm.
Yeah, so okay, let me see what else is there. Okay, so any fun anecdote or any fun experience you'd like to share about the whole writing process from this book or a previous book?
Um, any fun anecdotes or experiences aside from the ones that I've shared already? Um, let's see. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I guess I'm not as fun as I thought I was. But just the fact that uh I get to think about my grandparents so often now. They're like, my grandma is basically a huge component of everything I share with people. That's always been at the forefront of the fun that I have, because she gets so excited when I share a story about her or I just share a story with her. This is a little more touching than fun or funny, but she's going through chemotherapy treatments right now. Every Tuesday, I sent her a different story, and I've been starting to share that with my audience overall. And she just gets such a kick out of all the comments that she receives and all the people who are sending her these good wishes. She's 90, almost 92 years old, so she doesn't even understand how people from around the country know who she is or are getting access to these stories about her. So that's been really nice.
And it's apparent how much your grandparents have an influence on you because the whole prologue of the book, you have given a nice tribute to them. And
Yeah,
the way you have written that, it was so realistic. It was like I was sitting with them at the dining table, hearing them talk to me. So I think,
yeah,
they would be very happy, like your grandmothers, when they read or
yeah.
read more about the prologue. Even the
Hmm.
book trailer, they would be very happy watching it.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's actually really funny. So the book trailer was made by a friend of mine in India who found my first book online, read it, and then just made a free animation for me. And I didn't even know. somebody asked me to YouTube my own name, and I did, and I saw this video that had like thousands of views, and it was a animated depiction of my first book. So I reached out and we connected and we started chatting, and he's a great guy named Suman. And I asked him to do the animated trailer of the prologue to the book about my grandparents. And when I got back the animation, my eyes were huge and my jaw was dropped, because I didn't send him pictures of my grandparents or anything, but he basically got the four of them, like, obviously not exactly how they looked, but he got, one of my grandmas has blonde hair and blue eyes, and the other one has gray hair and brown eyes, and he got that correctly. And then one of my grandpas was like a little taller and had no hair on the top of his head and only hair on the back, and he got that. And then my other grandpa was like had glasses, and he got that. It was so weird. So that was just a crazy coincidence.
Wow, it sounds really amazing. I mean, how is it possible, right? You must
I
have been
don't
so
know.
happy watching that.
I don't know. It was wild to watch them and see like how well he did.
Right. So, shall we do a quick round of rapid fire questions where you get just one or two
Yeah,
sentences to answer the questions?
yeah, my favorite.
Okay. Okay. Starting now.
Uh-huh.
Write during day or night?
I don't have a preference, but I usually write after having read something. That's like my only little thing that I have to do. I need some ideas from
That's true
inspiration.
for me too.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Audiobooks or podcasts?
I listen to both. My podcasts are usually not personal development related. So audiobooks for the personal development stuff, and then podcasts I listen more so to like true crime and sports.
Ebooks or print books?
Definitely print.
Love the smell of them
Yeah.
and the feel, of course.
Mhm.
So, write drunk, edit sober, the reverse, or do everything sober.
I don't do anything professionally drunk. I would not be good at that. I really separate those two things.
That's good. Okay. Something about the writing process that always gets on your nerves.
Something about the writing process that always gets on my nerves. It doesn't get on my nerves necessarily, just because I try not to let anything get on my nerves. But when asking for feedback, I like get a little bit of anxiety and stress when people give battling comments. So somebody really likes one paragraph and somebody really doesn't like another paragraph, and then I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do? So that's always difficult.
Can't please everyone,
I just
right?
want to please everyone.
Yeah.
So and like I said, I'm not super attached to specific parts of the story. So I'm just like, I don't really know.
Okay. So, what's success according to you?
I I really try to write, live, speak, whatever for an audience of one. So as mundane, cliche as it may sound, if one person in my audience, for this book is my grandma, if one person enjoys it and gets something out of it and says that it impacted them or evoked an emotion of any sort, that's success for me.
That's so wonderful. Okay. So, how do you deal with negative reviews of your books?
Yeah, so I've gotten negative reviews before, and after laughing at them, because that's just what I do, uh, I just kind of think, for people to share negativity with others, give like sort of an invective comment or any sort of derogatory writing, I just think that something had to have happened to them in their lives that led them to that point. So immediately I flipped the switch from any sort of madness or anger toward this person to sympathy. Something has driven them to that point in their life. So immediately it's kind of like I feel badly that this person would want to hurt another person.
So, it's like don't defend, but respond with compassion.
You said it way better than me.
Okay. So, if someone comes to you asking for a book recommendation, what are the three books you would recommend?
I would recommend for fiction, I would go with The Alchemist.
Mhm.
For nonfiction, but still beautiful creative storytelling, Tuesdays with Maury is my favorite book by Mitch Albom. And then a totally random, out of left field book would be Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It's like a sci-fi parallel universes book. That's kind of cool.
Haven't read that. I'll have to,
Mhm.
add that to my list. And three authors who you can like, whose work you can read anytime.
Yeah, number one is definitely Mitch Albom. Um, his just style of storytelling, like he has books that are almost all of them turned into movies and shows, and that's my dream is to see these stories come to life. Number two would be John Gordon, just for the fluidity and the storytelling, and also because he's just been such a major influence on me in my journey. And then number three, I would say, Robin Sharma always tells great stories as well. And even, when I see him posting on social media, I like reading those too.
Okay. Last question. What's one author confession that you haven't made anywhere else?
Um, hmm. One author confession that I haven't made anywhere else. Let's see.
Off the top of your head.
Ah, I honestly, I like to write while like almost laying down, like I'm just super comfy when I write, and it's not like this intense, sitting at a desk typed over. I'm like basically on my back or on my tummy just writing, and it's just like for fun. I almost fall asleep sometimes when I'm writing.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you listen to music while writing?
I listen to music. I sort of get into these like weird superstitions when I'm writing, especially longer pieces. Like I remember for The Journey to Cloud Nine, when I was writing that, the second book, I listened to the same playlist every day that I sat down to write. But when I write now, or when I wrote What Happens in Tomorrow World, I didn't really listen to music. Yeah, it's
That's
always different. I'm not like I love routine, but I dislike monotony. So I'm always trying to change things up.
that's such an interesting combination. Love
Yeah,
routine but dislike monotony.
yeah,
You should
yeah.
definitely share your playlist with me.
I will.
The
I will. It's so when a lot of the times, even though I'm trying to like do lightheartedness and funny and bring happiness to personal development, I also do like that balance of feeling all of the emotions and not being afraid to experience pain or cry. Or so my second book was very emotional. So I listened to this playlist that my buddy created. It's actually called Sad Shit, and it's just really like sad songs, like very touching, very powerful, very emotional tunes. um and that's the indicator for me that this is kind of fun. When I write, also, I guess this is a confession, like my best stories are ones where like I actually make myself laugh or cry, a lot of the time, because that's how I know other people are going to get the same reaction to it, or I hope other people get the same reaction to it. So a lot of the times when I'm writing or even reading or proofreading or editing, like I will feel the same emotions that I want the reader to get. I will cry onto the computer screen and hopefully not break it.
That's awesome. That's like very interesting, and I'm sure your book will do great because it has such a positive message. And right now, the world is in such a place that we need a message like that, especially with all the uncertainty around us.
Yeah,
So,
I sure hope so.
yeah, thank you, Jordan. This was a really, really valuable talk. I'm sure the audience enjoyed it as well.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, I hope so. And please just stay in touch. And there are a lot of ways that I want to help people and a lot of things that I've created for people. So I hope that anyone listening wants to be a part of this, creative storytelling world.
Definitely. I'll share the link to your newsletter also in the description. So thanks so much. All the best for your new book.
Thanks, Anna. You're the best.
So that's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had your pen and paper ready with you, and I hope you took lots of notes because Jordan gave us some amazing, insightful, super valuable tips. And if you are an author, these tips are definitely going to work for you. I'm going to leave a link to Jordan's website, his Medium profile, and his newsletter in the description of this video. And I'm sure you would find his content inspiring as I do. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun. So if you have any questions for Jordan or me, please let me know in the comments. And if you have any ideas about who I should interview next or what topic should my next video be on, let me know. I'll be happy to hear your suggestions. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye.